taking the stage. The top 10 Democrats running for president debate last night on ABC. We have a report and analysis. On retreat, Republicans meet in Baltimore what President Trump told them about his possible opponents in the 2020 election. Getting warmer, the relationship between the United States and China is showing signs of improvement. And going to Asia, church officials unveil the destination for Pope Francis' trip later this year. Why it includes a family reunion. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, September 13th, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby. The top Democratic presidential candidates shared the same stage for the first time. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren were joined by 7 others trying to win the White House in 2020. While last night's debate showed division among the party's liberal and more moderate presidential hopefuls, the group didn't speak about abortion. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi breaks it down. Jason?
Why Democrats did jump into some pretty tricky controversies, including whether the government should take away certain guns from people and whether the government should provide health care coverage for all Americans. We also heard some exaggerations, like from Senator Bernie Sanders. He said all the experts agreed that his health care plan was seen to lower costs best for Americans.
Candidates are here. It's going to start right now.
Democrats battle on health care at the ABC News presidential debate.
How are we going to pay for it?
Former Vice President Joe Biden says Obamacare is working. But Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders claims it's not.
You got to defend the fact that today, not only do we have 87 million people uninsured and underinsured, you got to defend the fact that 500,000 Americans are going bankrupt.
Senator Sanders' prescription, no private insurance, Medicare for all.
And while Bernie wrote the bill, I read the bill. 149 million Americans will no longer be able to have their current insurance. That's in 4 years. I don't think that's a bold idea. I think it's a bad idea.
I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance company. I've met people who like their doctors. I've met people who like their nurses. I've met people who like their pharmacists.
Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke takes aim at assault-style rifles.
Yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
One of these Democrats will challenge President Donald Trump next year. At 76, Joe Biden would be the oldest person ever elected to a first term.
I stand with Barack Obama all 8 years.
Still, a former Obama cabinet member questioned the former VP.
They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Biden wedged between the two closest to him in the polls, Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren.
Did anybody change their standing? And I think among those 3 candidates, the answer is probably not really.
And let's fact check another line from last night's debate. Vice President Biden said his administration never locked up immigrants in cages. Now, these cages refer to these chain link fence rooms that separate men and women and children. And the Trump administration has used those rooms, but actually, they were built and also used by the Obama administration. Wyatt?
Correspondent Jason Calvi reporting. Thanks, Jason. Kristen Day, Executive Director for Democrats for Life of America, joins me now with her analysis of last night's debate. Kristen, welcome back into the broadcast. Pro-life issues were not addressed last night in the 3 hours of the debate. What questions would you have asked that you didn't hear?
I would like to ask several things. I mean, number one, when they were talking about health care, I would ask them, do you believe that a child that supports abortion should receive health care? We saw that a lot of them did not vote for that in the Senate, and the House has yet to really weigh in on that. So that's number one. I guess number two, I would say, when does life begin? When do you believe that life is worthy of all the protections that you talk about for all the other citizens of the United States? When does that child get that right? So I would have a lot more questions as well, because this issue does need to be addressed.
And especially that second question, because so many of them have avoided that issue when asked directly about that.
Right.
You know, you and I have talked about missed opportunities before on some of these debates, both on the part of the candidates and even the moderators to ask some of these questions. So how concerned are you that pro-life issues are being ignored by the wider Democratic Party?
I think they are largely being ignored because they know that the sound bites are going to be very bad. When asked about late-term abortions or things like that, they're all going to come out and say that, yes, we all favor late-term abortions. And you know that the majority of the Americans don't support late-term abortions. So on that note, we were very pleased that Tulsi Gabbard came out and said that she does oppose late-term abortions in an interview, and she said that personally she wouldn't get an abortion. So I think that's some good movement into having one of the candidates actually talk about that in that way.
Maybe you could expand on that a little bit more, because I was reading about that Tulsi Gabbard had come out, voiced her opposition to third trimester abortions. Do you think there's an opening? Does she provide some sort of opening in the party here to steer that conversation in some way towards restrictions of any kind on abortion? It's
an important discussion for the party to have, because they are really telling pro-life Democrats that they're not welcome, and really we have no candidate to support. You know, we have given our candidate questionnaire to all the presidential candidates, and it doesn't address their position on abortion. It just says, do you want the pro-life vote? Do you think that the Democratic Party should allow pro-lifers in the party? And would you open the big tent? And none of them have responded. So we're hoping, we send it to Tulsi Gabbard, so we're hoping that she will respond and say that, yeah, I want the pro-life Democratic vote. Because otherwise, pro-life Democrats have a decision to make in the primary. Do you vote for one of those candidates, or do you write somebody in who better represents our views?
So just to follow that up, and I know I've sort of asked this question of you before on the program, Kristen, but as head of a pro-life group of Democrats, how do you convince your party that, you know, the pro-life constituency there should be a priority?
I think we have to convince them with our votes, and in this primary we have to make our voices known. And we went to the Detroit debate, we went to the Houston debate, we're going to be in Ohio, and expressing our views that our voice needs to be heard and our votes matter. So I think the pro-life Democrats really need to speak with their vote in this primary election and vote for somebody, even if it means writing in, that represents our views fully.
Okay, very good. Kristen Day, Executive Director of Democrats for Life of America. Thanks so much for your analysis. Going on.
Thank you.
President Donald Trump ridicules his Democratic challengers. He spoke to congressional Republicans last night as the Democrats debated. White House correspondent Mark Irons has more on the president's comments. Mark?
Wyatt, the president made some political promises. He says he's working on a substantial tax cut for middle-income Americans. Outside of policy, he called out Democrats by name, and it marked his own return to a city he recently described as a rat and rodent-infested mess. Opposed to his criticism, protesters mock President Trump in Baltimore, a place the president says has been destroyed by failed and corrupt rule. He joined fellow Republicans in the city who hope to take back congressional power in Washington.
We also meet to prepare for the coming fight, because the traditions and beliefs that have made the American dream possible are under attack like never before.
The GOP needs to win back over 30 seats to control the House in 2020. Their political success is closely tied to President Trump's performance in next year's election. He wasted no time criticizing Democratic contenders, including South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Buttigieg! Do you believe this guy? He's doing a rotten job running his own city. Lousy job.
With Senator Elizabeth Warren now considered one of the frontrunners for the Democrats, the president jokingly insisted he may have begun insulting her too soon.
I hit Pocahontas way too early. I thought she was gone. She's emerged from the ashes. And now it looks like she could beat Sleepy Joe. He's fallen asleep.
Ridiculing his presidential opponents with nicknames like Pocahontas and Sleepy Joe, President Trump was earlier asked if he respects any of the Democrats.
I respect all of them.
All of them?
I respect everyone. Let me tell you, it takes a lot of courage to run for office. I respect all of them. See that? I'm getting to be much better as a politician. You never thought you'd hear that answer.
And the president is responding again to the possibility of his own impeachment. He says he's not concerned Yesterday, the House Judiciary Committee voted to approve guidelines for impeachment hearings. It is worth noting that Democrats are still divided about moving forward with impeachment proceedings. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi says we can't go there until we have the facts. Wyatt?
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. The tepid relationship between the U.S. and China might be warming up. The president's delay on new tariffs on Beijing could ease tensions between the two economic superpowers. President Donald Trump with a partial peace offering toward China.
Week in honor of President Xi, we gave them a 2-week reprieve, and so we'll be doing the tariffs on October 15th instead of October 5th or 1st.
The postponement of the tariff increase to 30% on $250 billion worth of goods was originally set to begin on China's 70th anniversary.
This was done as a goodwill gesture to the Chinese.
The Trump administration's announcement also comes on the heels of Beijing waiving import tariffs on some U.S. items. So, could this be the beginning of the end of the trade war between the U.S. and China?
To quote a Buffalo Springfield song, there's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear.
U.S. and Chinese officials are expected to resume trade talks sometime next month in Washington, but a date has not yet been set. Some analysts say this standoff is hitting both countries in the wallet. Chinese trade data shows soft global demand is affecting its economy. And this summer, U.S. manufacturing fell for the first time in 3 years.
I think both the U.S. and China are quickly realizing that this is a painful battle. No one is winning. It's a matter of who loses less.
Global stocks, for the most part, have been rising since the U.S. and China have offered olive branches to each other. In Hong Kong, a tennis tournament and a London musical are the latest events to be postponed. Officials have concerns over safety and disruptions from pro-democracy demonstrations. The protests earlier led to schedule changes for concerts, fashion shows, and international conferences. Eastern Catholic bishops from across Europe have been in Rome for annual meetings. The focus this year has been on working together between the different Eastern churches in Europe. These churches are in full communion with Rome, but maintain their own traditions, especially in their liturgies. Bishop Hlib Lonchyna is the Bishop Emeritus of the Ukrainian Catholic Eparchy of the Holy Family of London and the Apostolic Administrator of St. Vladimir the Great of Paris. He participated in the meetings this week and joins us now from Rome. Bishop, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing Eastern Catholics right now?
The challenge that all Catholics have in the world, I mean, there's secularization, there's globalization, there is also a certain form of persecution in the form that for example, different laws that are enacted or different mentalities that are taking shape. So these are the same challenges that all Catholics face.
And of course, as you know, Ukraine has had ongoing internal struggles and an open conflict with Russia over the Crimea region. Other Eastern churches have ongoing conflicts in their homelands as well. Did this issue come up in your meetings, and what did you have to say about that?
Most definitely. I mean, there's a war going on in Eastern Ukraine, of which we cannot forget. I mean, our brothers and sisters are dying there. The people in the villages are very often left and abandoned to their own cares. Luckily, we have the Caritas Ukraine, which is helping them in a great deal. And during our meetings, we are always praying for peace in Ukraine. It is always being mentioned that every day there are casualties in this war. So it's a great preoccupation for all of us.
In October, the Vatican will hold a meeting of bishops discussing the Amazon region. It's expected the topic of married priests will be brought up, and it's a controversial one. Of course, Eastern Catholic churches have the tradition of married priests. How does that work?
Indeed, we do. This is a very old tradition where one first gets married and then he may become a priest. We have both married priests and celibate priests and religious priests. So there are these three groups that we have, and we all cooperate with each other and to evangelize our people.
And tell me a little bit more about how that works, because like you say, you have different people from different backgrounds, like you say, some who are married, some who remain celibate. How are they able to work together and really minister the gospel with their different talents and abilities?
When a priest is married and he has a family, he has a parish, usually he is in that parish for a good number of years. So he gets to know the people very well. He will baptize them and he will lead them throughout their lives. Then he will baptize their children. Their children grow up with his children. It's a very family affair. And the priest is very close to his people. Of course, the celibate priests also are very zealous, and they give all of themselves to evangelization and to pastoral work.
Well, it's so interesting to hear more about the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church and about your meeting there in Rome. Bishop Hlib Lonchyna, Apostolic Administrator of St. Vladimir the Great of Paris, thanks so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
Coming up, analysis of the college admissions cheating scandal. Actress Felicity Huffman was back in court today. The judge sentenced her to 14 days in jail for her role in a sweeping college admissions bribery scandal. The Desperate Housewives star pleaded guilty to a single count of conspiracy and fraud in May. Huffman will also have to pay a $30,000 fine and perform community service. She is the first parent to be sentenced among those charged in the scheme. Here to offer her insights is Mary Claire Amsalem, policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation's Center for Education Policy. Mary Claire, welcome in. Felicity Huffman has admitted to paying $15,000 in 2017 to boost her older daughter's SAT scores. How have we got to this point where parents are paying to get their children accepted into college?
Yeah, it's certainly sad to see that parents have gotten to this point, and I think that it's a result of our bachelor's degree obsessed society. We're telling kids from a very young age that college is a silver bullet that will solve all of our problems and that will shoot us into the middle class or even the upper class, and that's not always the case for everyone. And so it's a sad case. It's sad to see someone be punished in this way for the college admissions scandal, but I think we should take this opportunity to have a real conversation about why parents are getting to this desperate level.
An admissions consultant helped to execute this scheme. Do you see this as a rare instance, or has our, as you say, degree-obsessed culture made the admissions process one that is inherently vulnerable to corruption?
Yeah, I think that throughout this court process, it was brought up multiple times during the proceedings that admissions scandal has happened far too often. There have been a number of instances where cheating on the SAT has occurred. And so it's certainly something we need to take a look at. We certainly don't want a system where the wealthy are able to pay their way into college. I mean, that's certainly not fair. No one wants that. But again, we need to take a look at our culture, and we need to say, are we using college as this one-size-fits-all service for all people in America, that parents are so desperate that they're willing to pay millions of dollars in some cases in order to get their students into these elite institutions? I think that we should be having a broader conversation.
Let's follow up on that. I mean, how do you think we should look at the college admissions process here? What is the right approach, I guess, in other words?
Well, certainly college admissions should be merit-based. Students who work hard, and study hard and have their dream of getting into their dream school, their dreams should be fulfilled, and they shouldn't be punished because their parents don't have the means to boost their SAT scores, for example. But we should be taking a look at college alternatives. In many of these cases, these children might not have wanted to go to college. They might not have been, well suited for some of the colleges that they got into, but they felt trapped because they have to go to college and they have to go to these elite institutions, whether or not that's a great fit for them. And so I think it's sad to see some of these parents feel that they needed to push their children in this direction, but we should be more accepting as a culture of, maybe a community college is a great path for some students, maybe a vocational track, maybe an apprenticeship. We should be talking about those other alternatives and not see them as less than a college degree.
Today's sentencing of Huffman is being seen as an indicator of what's to come for others charged in the case. Actress Lori Loughlin and her husband are also facing prosecution. Is jail time warranted, or do you think there should be some leniency here?
It's difficult because the law was clearly broken here, and the parents knew they were breaking the law. I mean, they literally paid bribe money, so it's difficult to argue that, oh, I didn't know what I was doing was wrong. They clearly were aware of what they were doing, and they were aware that they were breaking the law. Lori Loughlin, my understanding is that she pled not guilty. It seems like there was a pretty harsh sentence in the case of Felicity Huffman, so it'll be interesting to see if the courts are kind to Lori Loughlin. We'll definitely be watching.
And that's a key difference, is that Lori Loughlin saying that she is not guilty,
Right.
and then Huffman said she was guilty. So we'll have to see how it all plays out. Mary Claire Amsalem, policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation Center for Education Policy. Thanks so much for your analysis.
Thank you.
Up next, the Vatican says Pope Francis will travel to Thailand and Japan later this year. We'll hear from one nun in Thailand with a special connection to the Holy Father. The Vatican confirms Pope Francis will travel to Thailand and Japan later this year. The Pope's representative to Thailand announced the trip this morning.
His Holiness Pope Francis will make the apostolic visit to the Kingdom of Thailand.
The Holy Father is expected to highlight his call for complete nuclear disarmament and honor the small Catholic communities in each country. The trip will take place November 19th through the 26th. It will be Francis' fourth trip to Asia. The last pope to visit Japan and Thailand was St. John Paul II. Catholics in Thailand are celebrating the first papal visit in 35 years. The arrival of Pope Francis will no doubt lead to a reinvigoration of their faith, but for one nun in a far-flung corner of the country, it will also lead to something more personal, a family reunion. They're not used to famous people at St. Mary's Girls' School in Udon Thani. The limelight rarely falls on this city, some 350 miles northeast of Bangkok. But gradually, the students have realized their unassuming vice principal isn't just anyone. Sister Ana Rosa Sivori is originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina. She came to Thailand in 1966 and has worked as a missionary in several parts of the country, as others have done for centuries. But she happens to share a great-grandfather with Pope Francis, making them second cousins. As rumors swirled about a papal visit, Sister Ana Rosa has become the center of attention.
Many people that are not Catholics, they're asking me every time, is he coming? When is he coming? He will be coming, because it means that they are interested. They want to see him. They want to meet him.
2 years ago, Pope Francis paid a historic visit to Myanmar at the height of the Rohingya Muslim crisis. Hundreds of thousands flocked to see him, including many who traveled from neighboring Thailand, but not Sister Ana Rosa. She says the two are close and exchange letters. The last time they actually met was 2 years ago at the Vatican, so the forthcoming family get-together in Bangkok is overdue.
I will be glad to see him, and he will be glad to see me also. We'll have the chance to see each other and to talk a little bit.
In 1984, St. John Paul II became the first pope to set foot on Thai soil when he spent 2 days in the country, partially to thank the kingdom for sheltering so many refugees from Southeast Asia's brutal wars. He visited a camp to spread a message of hope. Since then, the Catholic community has grown, but slowly. According to the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Thailand, today it numbers just under 390,000, less than 1% of the population. Whether the Pope's visit changes anything is a question for the future. But what isn't a question is Sister Ana Rosa's own future in Thailand. She's there to stay on papal orders.
He spoke to our Mother General, the Superior General of the congregation, saying that my work is in Thailand, to do the work in Thailand, so you don't move her anywhere.
And of course, stay with EWTN for more on the Pope's trip. We will update you as we learn more about his itinerary. And with that, we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back on Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.